Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for checking out the channel. Today we are talking Avengers Endgame spoilers. So if you haven't seen this movie, this is your final warning. Let's get right into it.
So yeah, the movie opens up, no Marvel Studios logo. We just see Clint and his family. They're having like somewhat of a picnic, and then poof, they fade away.
What a way to start the movie. It really has that dark undertone of despair that we got from the end of Infinity War, and I thought it was a pretty good transition from that movie to this movie. And so, continuing with the dreariness of it all, we get a conversation between Tony and Nebula on the Benatar right before Tony records that message that we all have seen in the trailers. And it seemed like all hope is gone. Tony's gone to sleep, but you're wondering to yourself, is he going to wake up? He's in such bad shape. What did you think about that?
Well, yes, he was in bad shape, but we all knew that he was eventually gonna go down to Earth, but we didn't know how he would have, and how he went back to Earth was kind of surprising that Captain Marvel saved his life.
That was a pretty cool reveal to show Captain Marvel in present day time. The only question I'm wondering is, how did she know where he was? Maybe there's some deleted scenes that explain the rest of the Avengers telling her that, our friend Tony is lost in space, and that's when she sets off to go find him. Other than that, I don't know how she found him.
Yeah, because the Captain Marvel first post-credit scene was not in the film when I thought it would be. Maybe that's the exact moment where they're like, our friend Tony, you need to go find him in space, and then that's when she sets off to find him.
Yeah.
And then when they're on Earth, they just were like, all right, Thanos is right there. He used the stones again, but who cares? Let's just go get him.
And they quickly get this plan together to go find him after they realize, or after Nebula tells them that he's hiding in a planet or a place called the Garden. They quickly go and find him, and let me tell you, I did not expect what happened. How did you feel about them killing Thanos so quickly?
I was like, okay, they just killed Thanos, and I was like, okay, what's gonna happen now? And yeah, and also while there, Thor learned from his mistake that he should always go for the head.
I knew that going into the movie, I didn't think that they would kill Thanos right away. I actually felt that he would beat them again, and that's how they suffered their next defeat, and that's why they go back to Earth, because they knew they were unable to take the stones back and change what happened with the snap. I did not see this Thanos was in such bad shape. You see what the toll that it's taken on his body, mentally, physically. I felt that by the time they surrounded him and really had him pinned down, that he was ready to die. How'd you think? What'd you think?
Like, once he was pinned down, I was like, what is he gonna do? But he was like, oh wait, I destroyed the stones, and I was like, okay, is he gonna, oh, never mind, he just died.
Yeah, I felt that he would destroy the stones, but I didn't expect for the stones to be destroyed, and the way he revealed it was kind of cool and kind of shocking. It really added to the gravity of the moment and the situation that the Avengers are in.
Okay, and 5 years later, from these 5 years, a lot has happened.
A lot has happened.
Yeah, I mean, Natasha's hair is starting to turn back to red. Ant-Man has been in the quantum realm for 5 years and is freed by a rat, and Cassie is now 15 years old.
And that was kind of emotional that we know that Scott and Cassie have a close relationship, and for him to come out and to have missed so much of her life was kind of a bit of a tearjerker, I think. But we really get to explore what these Avengers have been up to these last 5 years, and we know that Tony has really hung up his repulsor blaster, you can say, and he's backed away from any type of hero activity. He has his family. He has a daughter. Iron Man has a daughter. What did you think about that?
When he was like walking towards that tent, I was like, who's in there? And then when she comes out, I was like, he has a daughter?
Yeah, that was pretty surprising. And then Captain America's helping the survivors of the snap deal with some kind of support group. Black Widow's in charge, I guess, of policing the world. Everything's in shambles. It's been 5 years, but adapting to this new world has been a bit difficult, and I really like the way they showed that on screen. And it's not just only conversations, but it's the things they showed you from this movie that you really understand that things aren't really well, even though it has been 5 years. So now we get to Thor and what he's been up to. And I know a lot of people had some feelings about it, but I want to ask you first, what were your thoughts about it?
Okay, when we figured out Thor was became an alcoholic and he's gotten a little bigger, I was like, okay. And also, let's talk more about New Asgard.
Let me tell you, before we get into Asgard, let me talk about Thor and how I felt. Initially, I was shocked. I was really surprised that this is the Thor we got, but as we went along, you really understood that he was there in the last moments before the snap. He had the opportunity to stop it from happening, and he failed. So he feels responsible for all these deaths, and it really manifests in him letting himself go and drowning himself in a cup of alcohol. After thinking about it, I really like that they went there, because you gotta think of it in these terms. Think of your worst failure, and then multiply that by 1 trillion deaths. And then I think we really start to understand where he's at mentally. And I like that they really showed that instead of him just glossing over like, oh, okay, I failed or whatever. They really carried out that storyline with him, and that was part of his arc. And we'll get more of his arc when we get into a little bit later of the film. New Asgard. Which one?
Valkyrie is still alive. Korg and Meek are alive over there, and half of Asgard is gone because of the snap, obviously. And we also discovered that Fortnite is still popular in 2023.
Fortnite is still a thing, and let me tell you, I'm also happy to see Valkyrie back, because she is one of my favorite new characters, and I'm really excited to see what they do with her in the next phase, but more on her a little bit later. At last, we hit the point in the movie, the plot point that we all predicted would happen, and that's time travel. Which of these events sticks out to you? Because there's so much that happened within this extended sequence.
In fact, I actually liked all the time travel in this film. To me, it could have been a big mess, but the way they did it just felt great, because I haven't seen every MCU movie in the theater. I've seen every MCU movie, but not in the theater. I started watching them in the theater from Spider-Man Homecoming, and it was nice to revisit them and actually see these events on the big screen at last.
And I like that not only did we get to revisit these big moments in the MCU, but we got to see them from a different perspective, and they really added these small little details that makes everything even that much better going back and watching the original scenes. So, Cap v Cap. I think this is one of the most epic fights sequences in the entire MCU, and I was losing my mind. How about you?
I was like, oh yeah, and I'm sure our crowd was thinking the same thing as well. And the way they did it didn't make like any plot holes or anything, because they had a good excuse, like, I found Loki.
Yeah, because Captain America 2012 thought he was fighting Loki, because he has that shape-shifting ability, and that really doesn't mess with, him running into an alternate self from the future. The other thing that really caught my attention was Tony and Cap traveling to 1970. It was kind of touching and almost made me cry, but I managed to keep it together. How about you?
And Howard Stark and Howard Potts got to meet each other.
Yeah, and they're having this conversation about Howard Stark, how he's kind of scared that he's going to become a father and he has no idea what he's doing. And that kind of mirrors how Tony felt, I think, right before his daughter was born. And the fact that they got to have this conversation after Tony never really getting to say goodbye to his parents, because he didn't have no idea they're going to die. But for them to go back and have this moment, even though Howard Stark is unaware, I think was really touching.
I think so too, but just one more thing back at New York. It was nice that we got some scenes, but the reason why they're in 1970 is because Loki took the Tesseract, because he grabbed it and then he got teleported to another place. We don't know where he is, and it's never expressed through the rest of the film. Like, where did Loki go?
I think, like he told me off screen, I think this might be a way for them to set up the Loki series on Disney Plus. I think that's probably how we're gonna get the answers to that.
Yeah, I think so too, and
because it's too big of a scene, and like a cool scene at that, for them not to touch and just erase by Cap returning the stones and later on in the movie, which we'll get into a little bit down the review.
And next,
the bigger moment I thought in the entire time traveling sequence is when they go to Vormir, because once you know that Widow and Hawkeye are tasked with retrieving that stone, from watching Infinity War, we know that something's about to happen. And when we got into that, who did you think would be the one who'd make the sacrifice?
Honestly, don't know. Clem was like, "Oh, I lost my family, and that's I have to die." But she was like, "No, I'm dying." And then they're fighting, like physically
to
fighting.
Die. That to make the sacrifice. That's what made that fight so intense and so cool. Is a weird word to use at this moment, but it really was cool because they were both willing to make that ultimate sacrifice. Hawkeye, because he's a family man and all he cared about making sure that his family was okay. And Natasha, because like she said in previous movies, she has blood on her ledger and she would like to wipe it out. And what a way to wipe it out than making the ultimate sacrifice to save countless people who will never know the sacrifice she made. And yeah, that was another moment where tears started to come out because we've been with Natasha since 2010. She's been in so many of these movies, and to see her end her story arc in a heroic way was pretty cool to me.
And yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. This scene on Volmer was more intense than it was in Infinity War, and we saw Skull say the exact same thing, that you like have to lose what you love, a soul for a soul. And then like every time I watch Infinity War and he says a soul for a soul, I say, after he says soul, I say stone. And then the theater when he said a soul for a soul, and I said stone.
You did that again in the
And
theater?
yeah, also when we saw Natasha falling down that cliff, we saw the same camera shots that we did for Gamora, like seeing her falling, and we saw like her dead body at the bottom of the
It was almost like
chasm.
a shot-for-shot recreation of what we saw.
Just with
Gamora.
Black Widow instead.
And what a way to end that time travel sequence. And that was only the end of the second act. We still got an entire hour to go. And we finally arrived at the last act of this movie. We can talk about this last act for an hour or two, and it may not be enough. So in order to keep the video somewhat down, I'm going to pick two things, you're going to pick two things, and we're going to go on from there. So what's the first thing that really stuck out from this final act to you?
First thing we have to mention is that past Nebula was able to sneak past the Avengers without even getting noticed, and was able to bring 2014 Thanos here and completely obliterated Avengers base. And then the three heroes are there, and Thor becomes worthy again, and he holds Stormbreaker and Mjolnir at the same time.
What a cool imagery. And we got a little bit of a foreshadowing when he has that conversation with his mom, where he finally learns to accept that yes, he failed, but he needs to move past that and accept that it was a mistake. He let it happen, but he can't let that moment keep defining him. And when he realizes that he could be more, that's when he calls Mjolnir to him and makes his way back to present time. And to see him wield both of those weapons is a pretty iconic visual from this great franchise that has given us so many iconic moments.
But what's more of an iconic image is when Cap is worthy and he holds Mjolnir in his hands and is able to summon the thunder.
That was pretty amazing. I was kind of shocked when Mjolnir began to move. I'm like, what's happening here? How are they getting summoned? And when it flies past Thor into Cap's hands, I lost my mind in the movie theater, and so did everyone else in the screening we were sitting at.
Yeah, everybody was applauding, and isn't that in the comics as well?
Yeah, that is in the comics, and that's a bit of a fan service, and sometimes people use the word fan service, the phrase fan service, to make something look bad, but there's nothing bad about fan service when it's done as well as it's done in this movie. So at last, like you said, Cap is worthy. He has shed the secret that has been burying him, and it's out there. He knew about Tony's parents. He was a bit selfish in that moment, and it's out, and he's once again worthy and able to wield one of the greatest weapons in the entire MCU. So one of the moments that really stuck out to me was when everyone began to return and those portals started opening and everybody dropped down, and as everyone assembled, we finally heard that magic phrase that we all been waiting for the last 7 years, and that's Cap say, "Avengers assemble." At that moment, I was crying. I was shaking with excitement, with emotion. I couldn't believe that at last we got to experience it, because we had some sense that this would be the end for some of our heroes, and to really get that moment was a beautiful, beautiful moment in fan service. Like I said, when it's done really well, what can you say? The other moment that caught my attention, anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, that was just an amazing scene, and in the film that's probably gonna close out that character. The character actually says what we've been waiting for the past 7 years. Now, what were you gonna say?
The other thing that really caught my attention is when we saw the female heroes from the MCU assemble, and the camera pans over and we see all of them come to Captain Marvel's aid. That was pretty awesome as well. Me not being a woman, obviously, I really felt that that was one of the cooler images that we've seen in the entire movie. And I'm curious to see how ladies out there, girls, teenagers, women of all ages feel about it. I'm going to call my sisters, my nieces, my goddaughter, and really ask them how that make them feel, because to me it kind of gave me chills to see that image up on screen. How about you?
That felt great, and that also proves that Marvel is not sexist.
We arrive at the end game. What an emotional last 10 minutes, 8 minutes. We get Captain America's closing scene to his arc. We get Tony Stark making the ultimate sacrifice. He's the different person from the first Iron Man to where he is here. And when he snatches the stones away from Thanos and snap his fingers, or right before he snaps his fingers, he says that line,
"I am Iron Man." The words that he revealed to the world that he was Iron Man, and his last words in his lifespan were the same words.
But the thing is that when he said them in the first Iron Man, it was for him to be cocky and arrogant and really put himself out there. But when he says it in Endgame, it's because he's become a different person than he was back then. He's willing to make that sacrifice, even though it's going to cost him everything that he has built up in his life up to this moment. Now, Captain America.
I'm just gonna have to say, he was gonna go return the stones, and then he's not coming back. But then we see an old man at the bench, and we're like, who the heck is that guy? And we reveal that it's Cap, and after he returned the stones, he got to live out his life, and he got what he waited for 70 plus years, and that was that dance with Peggy. And when that happened, inside I was truly heartbroken, and you just started bawling.
Yeah, I was really crying. This is the hardest I've cried at a movie since, I think, ever. The other time that I've cried anywhere near to this, it was probably more It Wasn't Coco. This moment, this scene, this sequence really wrecked me. Putting that together with Tony's funeral, which, you wanted to say something about that?
That everybody showed up, even that kid from Iron Man 3 showed up, and Uncle Happy is like to his
right, that was such a touching
and is
moment.
Like, I'll give you all the hamburgers you want. And if you've been here since the start, you get that reference.
Yeah, and that pretty much says that Uncle Happy's here for you. I'm gonna look after you now. I had a great relationship with your dad, and I'm gonna try to fill some of that void. Even though it won't be the same, I'm gonna do my best. And then we get that final sequence with Cap and Peggy finally getting that last dance that he missed 7 years ago. It just really wrecked me emotionally, and I really felt it, and I thought it was a beautiful way to cap off the MCU.
And yeah, that was this film. At the end, we saw the whole cast and the original Avengers team playing with all the original cast members and their signatures. And also at the end, there's no post-credit scene, but I kind of felt like it didn't need it. But at the end, you could hear a few banging sounds. We don't really know what that's about, but some people think that those are the bangs from when Tony was creating the Mark 1 suit in that cave to escape. And I think if that is true, that's a good way to like say one last goodbye to the hero who started it all.
I have to agree with everything you just said, but no movie is perfect. There were two things that really stuck out to me as negatives. Stan Lee.
I mean, I don't even remember him in this movie.
His last cameo was kind of a waste and unrememberable, if that's even a word. Unremarkable, I
don't even remember seeing him at all.
Yeah, it just went by so fast. I guess I'll give them that they didn't know that Stan Lee would pass and that this would be his final cameo, but it was very underwhelming. The only other thing that I really didn't like about this movie is the fact that we didn't see Hulk do much when it comes to being a fighter and taking the field. He did snap everyone back to existence, and that really drained his abilities or really brought him down a peg. I understand that, but I really would have liked to have seen a rematch between him and Thanos.
Although there is some stuff, and when you kind of think about it, there is some stuff to nitpick about, but what really matters is that there's more good in this film. It has humor action, memorable scenes, great character development, and most importantly, it has a lot of heart to it.
Absolutely. And I want to tip my cap to the Russo brothers, Marcus and McFeely, everyone at Marvel Studios, the chief, the head, the top of the heap in this huge endeavor. That's Kevin Feige. He has managed to weave this crazy, fantastic, awesome story throughout 22 films. This is a feat that won't be matched anytime soon. The way they make us feel, the way they touch us emotionally, the way this movie alone made us reminisce, laugh, cry, like Eric said, it's just amazing. And what can you say other than just tip your cap to the magnificence that is this tapestry of heroes and stories woven together by all these storytellers. Alright guys, that's our spoiler thoughts. It's your turn to comment down below. This is a safe zone. Make sure to put all your thoughts, spoilers included, and also comment down with your favorite Avenger. We are still taking entries for that digital code First Avenger movie that we're giving away. We're taking everyone who comments from the last 2 videos. I know we say we'd reveal it in this video, but we already ran this video long enough, so we will be doing that definitely in the next video. Leave your comments, favorite hero, and what can you say? The beginning of every journey is the end, or part of the journey is the end. I really butchered that. Anyway, this is ATI saying